Hi, I'm Erik Voss, and Iron Man Tony Stark sadly left us in Avengers Endgame, and along with his wit, his charm, his well-seasoned salt and pepper hair, Stark's brilliant encyclopedic mind also departed our world, taking all of its secrets to the grave. Now, the biggest tragedy of this, of course, is that we here at New Rockstars pledged to investigate every character in the MCU, because Captain Marvel established that shape-shifting Skrulls are on the loose. Characters whom, in the comics, have infiltrated every aspect of life, including the ranks of the Avengers themselves. Endgame may have ended the game, but the search goes on. And as ridiculous, possibly offensive, and probably not even remotely true as this all is, we must nonetheless dig up Tony Stark's rotting and extra crispy corpse, ignoring the tearful screams of Pepper and Morgan as we plunge our hands into its chest, because we must know the truth. Was Tony Stark, this quirky, beyond humanly intelligent and durable mystery man of way too many talents, a Skrull? We'll find out in this episode of Skrull Search. Look, our paranoia in this Skrull search doesn't come from nowhere, folks. In the Marvel Secret Invasion comics #1, one of the Skrulls has been brainwashed into thinking he's Tony Stark. So yeah, there's definitely precedence of Skrulls posing as Stark in the comics. When our search began, it was for the missing Skrull from Captain Marvel. Remember, there were 4. Talos, the science guy, the one disguised as Coulson, and the one Carol Danvers chased on the train who got away, never to be seen again. Now, I think we can rule out Tony Stark from missing Skrull #4. Tony was born in 1970 and was already a rising public figure in 1995 when Captain Marvel took place. Sure, missing Skrull #4 could have, killed a 25-year-old Tony Stark and then took his place, but why would he do that? If you're trying to blend into human society, there are billions of other less famous humans to hide as. Like saying in the real world, if you're an alien trying to lay low, you don't disguise yourself as Elon Musk. Guy already looks like an alien. Instead, the case I am going to make is that Tony Stark was born a Skrull. Before you get triggered, smash that dislike button and comment no, and then click back to Pornhub where you probably were 2 minutes ago. Remember that we're just covering our bases with this Skrull search, and every MCU character is a person of interest, and Tony Stark, while recently deceased, is a fictional character whom my outlandish theories are free to retcon. I'm not putting all my chips on this one saying it's true. It probably isn't, but the least likely scenario is still worth considering, and the most fun. So consider the new insights that we learned about Tony's father, Howard Stark, from the past 2 Marvel films, Avengers Endgame and Captain Marvel. In Endgame, Tony Stark went back to the day of his birth in 1970, to the SHIELD base at Camp Lehigh, running into his father Howard while stealing the Tesseract. Tony asks Howard why he has flowers. Howard says, "My wife is expecting." Then Tony gets this perplexed look. He inquires, "How far along is she?" Howard shrugs, holds his hand over his belly to imply her womb size, and he jokes, "She's at the point where she doesn't like the sound of my chewing." Now, Tony's reaction is a bit odd, right? Tony chose this date and time specifically because he knew Howard Stark would be there at work. He must have known that at the time of his birth, his father was just leaving the workshop. So why would this information surprise Tony? Is it possible that the circumstances of Tony's birth were just a little strange? Is it possible that by not knowing how far along his wife was, Howard Stark was hinting at the confusion over another species gestation period? Is it possible that his wife hating the sound of his chewing is because the sound of teeth grinding food sounds really annoying when it's coming from the mouth of a Skrull? That's right, Howard Stark, also a Skrull? Oh, we just lost a few more. Enjoy Pornhub. Why would Howard Stark be a Skrull, you might ask? Well, in Captain Marvel, there is a very missable detail regarding the Tesseract. Previously in the MCU history, the Tesseract was always in the possession of Howard Stark following the events of the first Captain America. But Captain Marvel revealed that sometime before the late 80s, an exiled Kree scientist named Marvell got a hold of it, experimenting on the Tesseract to build a lightspeed engine to help the Skrull find a new homeworld away from the Kree. Why would Howard Stark share his precious Tesseract with some random alien? Unless Howard was also a Skrull refugee, embedded on Earth high in the ranks of its government forces, seeking an escape for himself and his people. In Captain Marvel, Marvell's notes on the maroon Skrull ship included a sketch of the Tesseract, very similar to the ones in Howard Stark's notes from Iron Man 2. So there must have been a connection between these two. And maybe that is why Howard said things were distant between him and his wife. Marvell died in 1989 and Bucky murdered Howard Stark in 1991, so they never got to see any dream of using the Tesseract to help the Skrull escape, which Captain Marvel did at the end of her movie. But if this is true, this could explain how Howard Stark and Tony Stark are such technological wizards. Inventing flying cars in the 40s, working on super soldier technology, inventing arc reactors no one else can, dozens of generations of suits of armor, and eventually cracking the code of freaking time travel. This could explain why Tony Stark grew up as a secretive sociopath with serious daddy issues, because he was forced to keep his Skrull identity a secret his entire life, feeling that he doesn't belong on this planet, surrounding himself with advanced alien-like tech, joking about UFO sightings with Peter Parker. And when Stark snuck a scanner on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s computer in the first Avengers to get access to all of their archives, he did nothing to alert them that Hydra had secretly taken over their organization, and he even lent Nick Fury his repulsor technology for his helicarriers and Winter Soldier that Hydra would manipulate. Pretty suspicious. Think about it, this is a guy who spent a career building advanced weaponry. Why? Maybe to help this planet defend itself from any potential alien invaders, like the militaristic Kree Empire that made him and his father refugees. That could explain why Tony Stark was way more terrified than any of the other Avengers of another alien invasion. Like, they all fought in the Battle of New York, but really Tony was the only one who was so paranoid about building a suit of armor around the world. And in the first Iron Man, when Tony built his first flying Iron Man suit, what is the first thing he does? He flies to the stars. He flies to the stars again in Avengers, again in Infinity War. Maybe because space is his real home. And yeah, we should just acknowledge that beyond a brain that's just too smart to be human, the rest of Tony Stark's body is weird. I'm not just talking about that moment when Pepper stuck her hand in his chest and it was filled with like gooey pus with zero blood, though that was also kind of freaky. He said it was discharged from the reactor, but it's weird there was no blood. Tony famously gets very little sleep. He can withstand crazy physical damage, even at one point getting impaled by Thanos in the gut. And he just sprays some crazy advanced sealant on the wound. And in Endgame, when this freaky body finally expires, we never saw what they did with the body. Cremation? Did they sink him in that lake? Instead of a burial plot, Endgame ended with a floating wreath and Pepper's "prove Tony Stark as a heart" arc reactor. Perhaps that reactor was hiding the truth, that the mechanical heart that Tony Stark engineered for himself was the closest to a true human heart that this Skrull in disguise would ever get. Yeah, I hear your comments. It's a stretch, pretty sure stretch. Yeah, I know it's a stretch, guys. I know there's plenty of other anecdotal evidence that you can find throughout the movies. Oh, like if he got knocked out, wouldn't he revert to a Skrull? Yeah, sure. But you know what? Stretching is the point, folks. If you want to get to the truth, you gotta stretch for it. Who should we investigate next in our Skrull search? Comment down below to let me know, and follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EA Voss. Subscribe to New Rockstars for more batshit Marvel theories. Thanks for joining me, and some of you are back from Pornhub. Great. Oh, I don't like being the bread of that sandwich.
A very astute observation, sir.